All right, pre-calc, we are going to go over the Chapter P practice quiz. So here we go. First up, we have our interval notation. So again, remember when we do our inequalities, this is how we will write our final answer. So first of all, going back to our inequality symbols here, whenever there is an or equal to, that means we're going to start off with a bracket. Smaller number always goes first, up to the bigger number. Just a less than or greater than is going to be a parenthesis. So there's number one. For number two, we're starting at 4. This is saying all the numbers greater than 4. So that means 4 is our smaller number. And again, greater than or equal to means we're going to have a bracket. And then it goes up forever, so that goes to infinity. And then also remember, infinity always has a parenthesis. So we don't ever have a bracket around infinity that will never reach infinity. So that's always a parenthesis. This is saying x is representing all the numbers that are less than 7. So 7 will be our bigger number. So I like to start by putting my bigger number on the right. And then that means going down forever will be a negative infinity on the left, which again has a parenthesis around it. Last one here, going from 0 to 10, we have 0. Oops, sorry, my pen stopped working there for a second. We're going to go from 0. Oops. Up to 10. 0 will have a parenthesis, 10 will have a bracket. That's my final answer there, 0 to 10. Next up, we're going to get into some exponent rules. So remember from Algebra 1, when we're dealing with our exponent rules, I'm going to change the size of this real quick. I always suggest you put a little 1 near anything that does not have a visible exponent. That will just help you to see that, you know, this u also gets the 3. So kind of like a distributive property, this 3 will get multiplied through by both of these parentheses. So I will have u to the third. V, 2 times 3 is 6. And this is over v squared, u to the third on the denominator that I did not do anything with yet. So now what I'm going to do is combine them together. So I'm going to take my u's, and the u's will give me u to the 3 minus 3, which will just be u to the 0. And my v's, my two v terms, I have v, 6 minus 2. So then if we remember back, u to the 0, anytime we have a power of 0, this is equal to 1. Okay, it's not 0, it's 1. So u to the 0 is 1. We have v to the 6 minus 2 is 4. So 1 times v to the 4th just gives me v to the 4th for my final answer there. Common mistake that people want to say is that anything to the 0 power is 0, but that is false. Anything raised to the 0 power is always equal to 1, so just keep that in mind. All right, up next, again, I'm going to start this off by putting a 1 here with the 3, so I don't forget about that. And then this negative 2 will get distributed through to all of these exponents. So I start off with 3 to the negative 2, x to the negative 6. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. And then y, 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Now, whenever I have negative exponents, what I like to do is make it a fraction and then just identify all of the negative exponents, which in this case is all 3 of these pieces. And those terms will all be moved down to the denominator, leaving me with, up top, we're just going to be left with a 1. Don't put a 0 there, okay? If all that stuff moves down, we have a 1 up there. And then all of my exponents will become positive. So 3 squared, x to the 6th, y to the 8th. And the last thing we got to do to clean this up, 3 squared is 9, x to the 6th, y to the 8th for my final answer. All right, so you have a couple of exponent rule problems there. Then we'll get into our solving equations. So again, we had a bunch of different levels of these problems back in pre-alg, alg 1, alg 2. So you just have to remember what to do when you see these different type of problems. First thing I recognize is when there are parentheses, I need to do my distributive property. So distribute the 3 through. So 3 times x is 3x. 3 times negative 4 is a negative 12. Right-hand side, nothing changing there in this first step. Then I need to move all of my terms around. Now, I like to move my variables to the left and my other numbers to the right. You could do that differently and I know some of you were taught to move the smaller variable. That's entirely up to you. But I'm just going to move my variables to the left, move my other numbers to the right. So 3x equals 6x plus 20. And now I'm going to move my x term to the left. 3x minus 6x is a negative 3x. Remember, when you're doing that, you just combine these numbers out front, and the x just comes down. Right-hand side, these are gone. We're just left with a 20. Last thing we need to do is divide both sides by negative 3 to get that x by itself. And we want to just leave this like this. Don't change it to a mixed number. Don't change it to a decimal. We want to leave everything as improper fractions because we will get into right triangles later on, and we will need to have them in that form. So we're just going to leave it like that. All right, up next. Excuse me. Up next, we have an equation with fractions. Excuse me. My throat's a little sore, so I'm going to be coughing a lot. I apologize for that. Remember, we need to multiply this by a number that will get rid of all of my denominators. You have multiple numbers to choose from, but if we want to stick to the smallest number, we're going to use a 6. But again, you could use a 12. You could use 18, 24. Like, there's a lot of numbers you could use in there. I'm just going to stick to the smaller number. So we're going to take this now and distribute it through. Remember, this is an equation, so if I do something to one part, I have to do it to all parts. And I don't change the value of the equation, I just change the way it looks. So I'm going to distribute this 6 through. And I'm going to show this middle step. This is not a necessary step to show, but I know some of you like to see it, and it does help to see exactly what is going on in this problem. So I'm going to multiply that 6 through there. All right, so over here, 3 goes into 6 2 times, so I'm left with 2. And again, you could just distribute this through in that step. I'm going to show it in a separate step. Over here, 2, my pen stopped working again. There we go. 2 goes into 6 3 times. So I have 3 times x plus 5. And then over here, you could use your calculator on this. 6 times 1/3 is just 2, or again, 3 goes into 6 2 times. 2 times 1 is 2. However you want to look at that, you'll get the same answer. All right, now, distributive property. I'm going to take this 2 and multiply it through. So 2 times x is 2x. 2 times a negative 2 is a negative 4. Over here, 3 times x is a plus 3x. And 3 times 5 is a plus 15. Up next, I will need to combine my like terms. So I have a 2x plus a 3x, which will give me 5x. And then I have a minus 4 plus 15, which will give me a plus 11. And then I have my equals 2. Move the 11, so subtract 11 from both sides. So 5x equals 2 minus 11 is negative 9. Last step here, to get x by itself, we will divide by 5. Final answer, x equals a negative 9 over 5. And it doesn't really matter where that negative sign is. It could be with the 9 or out front, or even with the 5 on the bottom. All right, up next, now we get into some inequality and absolute value, and then finally the quadratic inequalities. So, excuse me again. Again, I just want to point out our answers must be in interval notation. So we're going to do the same thing we did for the equations. It's just now we have an inequality. So I'm going to move my 9x over. 5x minus 9x is a negative 4x. Plus 9 is greater than negative 35. So next, move the 9. So subtract 9 from both sides. Negative 4x is greater than, this will give me a negative 44. Last step, divide by negative 4. And then also we want to remember here, I just divided by a negative number, so make a little note, star, whatever you want to do. Like, remind yourself here, hey, something happened in this problem. I usually like to draw some arrows and point out, like, you know, something happened here. I flip the inequality sign. Oops, that's going to be a positive, I'm sorry. Flip the inequality sign, so I now have a positive 11. So x is less than 11. I need to write my final answer in interval notation. All of the numbers less than 11 will look like this. One more of these. Again, when we have the compound inequalities, you can separate this if you want to, but we can do this problem all at once. If I need to move the 4, I subtract 4, but I just need to remember to do that everywhere. That's a 4. Sorry, it kind of looks funny. Negative 2 minus 4 is a negative 6, is less than or equal to 3x, is less than 22 minus 4 will give me 18. Now I need to divide by 3. Again, do that everywhere. I will not flip the signs here because the number I divided by is a positive 3. So this will be negative 2 is less than or equal to x is less than 6. The only time you flip the sign is when that number you're dividing by is negative, like we divided by a negative 4 here. So that's when we flip it. Just because I know some people are like, well, the 6 is negative. Doesn't that mean we flip it? No, it's only when this number on the bottom that we're dividing by is negative. So this is our answer in inequality notation, but again, we want to put this into interval notation. So final answer will look like that. Negative 2 with a bracket because it's or equal to. Up to 6 with a parenthesis because that one's just less than. All right, next up we have the absolute value. And remember, when we talked about this before, we talked about the acronym GOAL, which means that greater than means or, and the and statement goes with a less than. So this is something I would suggest writing down. So when we see this less than, I know that it's an and statement. So that means 2x minus 5 is less than 7. And 2x minus 5, flip the sign, change that to a negative 7. Excuse me. Solve this, move the number with no variable. 2x is less than 12. And last step, divide that by 2. We get x is less than 6. We will have the same steps over here when we do this, but remember we will end up with a different number because I have a negative 7 over here instead of a positive 7 like in the last one. So I end up with x is greater than negative 1. The and statement means that these will be together, so negative 1, comma 6 with parentheses. The or statement is when you want to do the u. So just remember that because on your test you might have an or statement. All right, last one in the inequalities is a quadratic inequality. So remember we have 3 things we need to do. First of all, we factor. I'll write down our steps here. Factor. Number 2, Number 2, we want to set equal to 0. And that'll give us our 2 zeros. And then the last thing we want to do is our sign chart. Well, not our last thing, sorry. We do a sign chart, and then the last thing is the interval notation. Okay, so we're going to follow those 4 steps. All right, so first up, I'm going to do x method to factor. So 2 times negative 7 is negative 14. Negative 5 goes at the bottom. So my 2 factors are a negative 7 and a positive 2. Divide by my leading number. So this tells me I have 2 factors of 2x minus 7 and x plus 1. So that's the first step, factor. Second step, set these equal to 0 to find out where is it 0. Okay, that's what I'm doing now, set them equal to 0. So 2x equals 7. One of my answers, x equals 7 over 2. Over here, subtract 1, x equals negative 1. So that's step 2. Step 3, with my sign chart, I have x, and then my factored form. Let me change the size of this so I can make it a little bit easier to see. I have 2x minus 7. Oops. I don't know what just happened there. Where's my back button? There we go. Oh, it took away too much, but that's okay. 2x minus 7, and then x plus 1. All right, so I have a negative 1. I got 7 over 2. Need a number less than negative 1. Pick any number you want, doesn't matter. A number between negative 1 and 7 over 2, I'm going to use 0. And a number bigger than 7 over 2, pick any number you want. We know that these are both zeros, so I'm going to fill in some zeros there. And then go ahead and plug them in. So if I plug in a negative 10, in the first one I'm going to get a negative, and the second one I get negative, so overall that's positive. So what I want to do is come up here and look at my answer. I'm looking for all the numbers that are greater than or equal to 0. That means positive. Since this is positive, I'm taking this column. I want that one. When I plug in 0, I get negative times positive, which is negative. I don't want this column because that's less than 0. Then plug in 10, I get positive times positive, which is positive. I want that column. So how do I write my final answer now? Well, I want all the numbers from negative infinity up to negative 1. This is going to get a bracket. Why is it a bracket? Because it's or equal to. Or, this is where the u comes in, all the numbers bigger than 7 over 2. So bracket 7 over 2, comma, infinity. That is your final answer. These last few problems are writing equations of lines. So first up, again, you will have these, not equations, what are they called? Formulas. You'll have these formulas on your test, so you don't need to memorize them. Just know how to use them. So I'm going to take my slope, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. First thing I'm going to do is replace everything with parentheses, so I don't miss any double negatives. y2 is 5, y1 is negative 2, double negative. x2 is 3, x1 is 4, 5 plus 2 is 7, 3 minus 4 is negative 1. My slope is negative 7. Simple as that. Follow your formula, plug in your numbers, get your answer. One more time. I'm just going to start by replacing the variables with parentheses. So y2 is 4. y1 is negative 6. Again, double negative. x2 is 3. x1 is negative 1. Again, double negatives. 4 plus 6 is 10. 3 plus 1 is 4. Make sure you reduce, like always in math. We always want to make sure we reduce. 10 over 4 simplifies to 5 over 2. Leave it like that. Don't change it to 2.5 or 2.5. It's a slope, so we want that in the form of rise over run. Next one, we are going to write the equation in y equals mx plus b. We have two equations of this. Oh, I'm sorry, we have three, because there's just a straightforward one, and then we have a parallel and a perpendicular. Again, I'm going to do this the way that I typically do it. If you do it the other way, you'll get the same answer. I'm just going to show it one way here. So I'm going to start with y equals mx plus b. Fill in what I know. Well, the y value is 4. My slope is 2, and x is negative 1. So what this will do is it'll tell me what the value of b is, and then I can write my equation. So b is equal to 6. So y equals m is 2, x plus b is 6. Simple as that. Next up, for a parallel line, first of all, I need this to be by itself. So y equals negative 2x plus 7. For a parallel line, I'm taking the exact same slope. So I'm going to do the same thing. Y is negative 3. M is negative 2. I stole that from my parallel line. X is 2 from the point we were given, right? This is just your xy plus b. Move that 4 over. We get b is equal to 1. Final answer, y equals the slope that I stole from the other line is negative 2x plus y-intercept is 1. And the last problem here, again, we need to start this off by getting getting y by itself. So subtract 6x. Let me back up a step. I'm talking while I'm writing here, and I'm writing the wrong variable down, sorry. 2y, negative 2y is equal to negative 6x plus 10. Divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2. Y equals 3x minus, who cares, we don't need that y-intercept. But now, since this is perpendicular, the slope that I will use, opposite, reciprocal of what I got here, this is a 3. So the opposite will be negative 1/3. Opposite reciprocal is negative 1/3. So one more time here, the y value is 4. My slope is negative 1/3. X is 3. And I need to solve this for b. So 4, use your calculator, negative 1/3 times 3 is a negative 1. Add that guy over to the other side. We get that b is equal to 5. So final answer here, let me change the color to make it stand out a little better. Y equals negative 1/3 x plus 5. Final answer. Okay, so again, this is your review quiz. If you have any questions on this, send me an email, stop down and see me, and let me know. Otherwise, that's everything you need to know for your tests.